Good afternoon, VB, and thank you for agreeing to take part in this interview series, the Humanist Prism interview series. I'm going to start by just saying a little introduction about you for our guests who are watching, and then we'll begin the conversation. I should say that I first met you, I think, not long after I'd started as the Chief Executive of Humanists International. You were in London, I remember, in 2017. Which would have been the first time that I met you. But I know that your involvement with what was then the International Humanist and Ethical Union goes way back. I think your first conference was 2002 in Amsterdam, or in the Netherlands, I should say. And in 2011, you were awarded the Distinguished Service to Humanism Award by the organisation. And your list of achievements and campaigns is remarkable, from I know you from speaking out about caste discrimination, access to housing, access to food, for shining a light on the issues that face people in rural communities across India, with water and the typhoon that hit India, and a list of amazing achievements. So as well as that, you're also the director of the Social Development Foundation based in India, which is a member of Humanists International. And I'm very pleased to have visited you in Delhi in 2018, where you were a wonderful host to me and Elizabeth, and showed us around and helped us connect with various people, including an amazing Dalit campaigner who we met and had a good contact with. So an amazing list of achievements there, and perhaps some of these we can unpack through the course of our conversation. So I just want to say again, welcome and thank you for joining the conversation.
Thank you, Gary. It's really an honor to be part of this conversation, and the very first person to be at your conversation.
That's right. It's a great thing. So we were just having a quick chat before we went online there, VB, about obviously the situation. We're recording this at the end of September. The situation across the world in terms of COVID-19 is really terrible in many communities. Can you tell us, how do you see the COVID-19 pandemic affecting your social campaigns and the issues that you've been monitoring in India?
The physical campaigns have really got affected, because what we are finding is that the authorities are using the pretext sometimes. But the one factor is that the role of the NGOs during the COVID and crisis, in distribution, the relief material, and reaching out to the people, to the migrant workers, have been acknowledged even by the government of India. And it looks like most of the role as the government these days are thinking related to the NGOs is just kind of a service delivery organizations. So they are happy that you have distributed so much of rations, so much of food packets, and or reached the people, or maybe all those kind of things. But when the questions comes of the rights, it's a real problem. And what has happened during this period is now, though people realize that they can't go out because the lockdown in India was really very strong, not very effective, but in terms of the government and authorities things, it was quite strong. We were unable to go. Even at this moment, we can't move that much. We move, but because it's also returning, and there is a fear that the number of cases are growing, so people are still avoiding. But then a large number of people have to go out. So what I'm saying is that during this period, we all have used the social media as a tool for our webinars, for web discussion. This has a new things, and it has really succeeded.
That's great. That's great. And I remember that at the start of the lockdown, which may have been back in April, which seems like a long time ago. It seems like a long time ago, but also not long ago. But it's been a very strange time.
Yeah,
But some of the scenes that we saw on the news here in Europe of the lockdown, especially in Delhi, was that there was a very short period of notice given to people, and that there was a big flux of daily workers, the casual labourers that had to suddenly walk hundreds of kilometers back to their home villages. Were those images that we saw, were those accurate of what was happening?
yeah, definitely the situation was very, very bad, and nobody could have imagined. This was what we can say that after the partition in 1947, we were witnessing this kind of a thing. The magnitude of people, they wanted to return to their homes after they felt neglected, left out, and nobody was ready to give them. So it is a simple thing. It's not, we coined the term as migrant laborers. Now the thing is that how can a person be a migrant in his own country?
Yeah,
That is one. It's very carefully, because you then, with these terminologies, we try to put the people on a very, very defensive wicket, so that they don't have a right. They are on the basically on the charities.
yes,
So
yes,
these people are basically the informal sector workers. Most of them comes to the urban centers and big cities like Delhi and Mumbai and Kolkata and Bengaluru, because there is nothing happened in the rural areas. There is no jobs, no social securities, and the caste system that function. So many times, the landless workers who are predominantly Dalits, and in other areas Adivasis also, uh, they have to go to cities to protect themselves from the indignities that are imposed on them in the name of the caste system, and we see the violence, the violation against them on a regular basis.
yeah. That's really interesting. I'd like to talk to you about caste system in just a minute, because I know it's something that you've done a lot of work on, and Humanists International has been active on. But I think for many of the people who will watch this conversation, um, especially when I think of some of my friends in Europe, they don't understand just how insidious the caste system is, and how it continues to the present day. But to leave that aside just for the moment, one thing I wanted to ask about was I've been following some news about the development of these ID cards. I think it's called is it an Aadhaar card?
Aadhaar, Aadhaar,
Yeah,
Aadhaar,
Aadhaar card.
Aadhaar.
And
Yeah.
that's a very interesting thing from a number of different levels. Thinking about the human rights aspect of this. And maybe could you tell us a little bit what is that? How does it work? And is this something which might have a benefit to people in rural communities?
Actually, see, frankly speaking, this Aadhaar card project was initiated by the Congress Party. And this government, that the people in the government that time opposed that.
Right. Okay.
Uh, so this is a politics of conveniences. And any party that comes to power feel, we have to. The digitalization process is basically a centralization process, a controlling mechanism or a spying mechanism, whatever you can say.
So
Though the government says that it has all safety measures. Now, what has happened? The fear of the people were that the Aadhaar is one number given. They say that it is a kind of a national register, a number for one individual. That makes him like, that is a kind of, that number is registered, and that person can avail the government benefits. So in the rural India, it has helped also. It's not that it has not helped. It has helped like the rural India, where people were not able to withdraw money. Those who are poor, most of them are illiterate. So now they have the number, they can get it. So this has helped also. It's not that, but it's also prone to be misused. But now, one of the things many people ask, that when Aadhaar is like a panacea of everything, what we are calling. then why are we not using Aadhaar as a voter identity card? So if I don't have my name in the voter list of India, and this happens actually that every time the voter list is corrected, amended, sometimes the names are removed, very and so what people say that if I have an Aadhaar card, I should be allowed to vote, and why shouldn't that? If that is the registry and national register, but I think this also is now everybody is silent on that. Perhaps it's not working that much.
That's interesting. That's interesting. I didn't realize that it was a proposal from the Congress Party. I assumed it was a BJP
No,
policy.
it was the Congress Party proposal, and they wanted actually because
Okay.
the government wanted to direct transfer to the poor people.
Right.
See, in our country, the poor have become also a good, vote catching thing for the political party. So you want to make schemes, and you think that you can transfer cash in the accounts of the people. Now we were thinking that during the pandemic, the government will transfer funds to people's account. At least all those who are in this sector, that would have worked well, but it has not happened.
So that's interesting, and the scale of this is truly mind-boggling. I mean, you often, for us here in Europe anyway, from a European perspective, to remember that India is a single country of 1.3 billion people. Like most of the states of India are several times the population of Britain. It's
Yes.
it's a country on a scale which is
Yeah.
kind of difficult for many people to fathom, and to be able to assign what we might call in Britain an identity card, a sort of a unique identity
Yeah.
to each
Yeah.
citizen.
Unique identity card. Yeah.
It's a
It's a unique identity card.
yeah. And so obviously one of the policies was that this would be used as a sort of bank account for people in rural communities, but has that aspect of the policy not actually been realized yet?
No, bank, see, it's the thing is that the bank accounts of all of us have to be linked with Aadhaar cards.
I see.
And then there is another card which is called which is income taxing. All these things are there.
I
So
see.
they say you have to attach. So mostly it's important for the rural poor, because if the government want to transfer money in their funds, like the pension funds, like the widow pension or the SC/ST, the scheduled caste means the Dalits, and the ST means the Adivasis, scheduled tribe. So if the government want to transfer any money to them, they say we must have their numbers and number linked to bank. So what happens is that from one pressing of a button in Delhi bank, the money can be transferred to all the people. So
I see.
on the positive side, that can work definitely. If there is a good intention, it's not. But the only thing is that it is not the panacea for everything. That is one thing. And secondly, because of very private operators now, the personal data, which in country like ours we don't are very there is nothing personal actually. So that is where the danger is, that the data can be everywhere, like the companies, like so many mobile operating companies, the banks are private. So what happens is that if data is leaked, or this is happening a lot in number of places, so that is a real danger. Otherwise, it's not for the rural poor. If properly implemented, it is not that bad. The only bad thing is sometimes that one should not be rigid. That only because Aadhaar, in the old people, they have a thumb impression also in that Aadhaar. So if the person, people say that in the old days the thumb impression don't remain the same. And many times they press it, and they press, and that is not recognized by the computer. So the person doesn't get the money.
Wow, that's almost that's obviously a real physical
So my
problem.
point is that you go to the technology, but don't leave the human aspect. Don't leave that thing. There has to be a kind of corrective person who can do it immediately, and otherwise if an old man walking from his village to bank for nearly 5 kilometers, go to withdraw money, and when he reaches the bank or ATM and press the thing and it doesn't come, it's no something has to be done.
I realize this is a massive issue to talk about in a very short conversation, but you mentioned Dalits and the caste system, and this is obviously something which you and others have been campaigning on in India. Now, the caste system, I think, to think about this from my point of view of somebody from Europe, it's a very difficult thing to try and understand kind of comprehensively. I think probably in the European view, we would see caste discrimination as similar to racism, but it's obviously a lot more than that as well. I wonder, just for the benefit of people who will be watching this who are not familiar with issues of caste, could you give us some idea of a brief overview of what the caste system is and what caste discrimination is?
There is a lot of work in Britain on the caste system and caste issues. Perhaps the better work than even in India, in the universities of Oxford and Cambridge. So, because in certain things we felt that the Europeans were at least honest, because from their position, they might have been here as a colonizer, but many intellectuals who came from there saw the situation, and they documented things. So caste is basically based on your birth. So we have the 4 varnas. It is said that a person is born as per his caste. So the top varna is called Brahmins. The Brahmins for the knowledge giver, they say, according to the caste people.
And these then there is often be sort of priests, like Hindu priests, is that right?
They were often to be priests, but they are everywhere. They dominate India's intellectual life, political life, intellectual life, every forum. So they are not just confined to the priest. If they were confined to that, we would have been happy.
I see.
So the Brahmins. Then there is a Kshatriyas, who is called the warriors. So their job was to fight the battle in the war. And then the third was the Sudras. The Sudras were, third was the Vaishyas, the mercantile community, the business community. So their job is to, engage in the business work. And the fourth is the Shudras. The Shudras are basically the farmers, the service class. And Dalits were outside these 4 varnas, actually.
Right.
Dalits were never a part of this. And that's why they were called untouchables and unseeable by all these. So what you called Hinduism was actually called Varnashrama or Brahminism.
Okay.
The original name is actually Brahminism. Many people called it Brahminism because the Brahmins defined it. And that's why when the critique comes for the whole issue of the Hinduism or Brahminism, it's without understanding the privileges of Brahmins. You can't really understand the caste. Caste has to be understood in terms of the privileges it creates and in terms of the obstacle it creates. So, as we say, Dr. Ambedkar was the greatest champion of civil liberties and human rights. He says the caste system, if you see, it's like an ascending order of reverence and descending order of contempt. So what he meant was, like, you always revere the person who is higher in the ladder of caste, like the Brahmin. So you are all looking up to him, like, even an idiot will be respected. Oh, you are like, if he is not knowledgeable, nobody asks. And the lower you go, you look down upon the people. So the lowest is, if we say the manual is scavenger, The person who you clean the human excreta, go into the sewage line, many dies, face the whole victimization based on their birth, untouchable, unseeable, and humiliation because no respect for his work, not in terms of money nor in terms of social acceptability. So this is caste. So race sometime because they are two different diverse things. Somebody has written recently in United States that book on caste, which race and caste they have linked together. But obviously, a lot need to be understood.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting subject, I think, for people who are not from India or South Asia to try and understand, because I think, like I said, I think people try to fit the issues of caste discrimination into what we might in Europe understand as the kind of racial discrimination lens, and they obviously are different in many ways. And I guess to one way that I might try to understand it better is to think about it as a really extreme form of what we would call in Britain the class system, where you have people who are born into like lower class families who would have been workers and so on and so forth. But it's obviously much, much more severe
No, it's not the class because what happens is that sometimes look at this the Marxian views they fail to understand this many
right.
times because a poor Brahmin can still be at the higher level of social hierarchy than even a rich Dalit. They will always remind a Dalit that you are a Dalit. This Brahmin is super. So that kind of a so this is what I say the birth-based privileges. That is
And
the
it
birth-based
transcends
privilege.
obviously.
And secondly, you are born. You cannot born in other caste. So the Brahmin will only born in Brahmin caste. So, like, it's not that anybody can be a Brahmin. Anybody can be a Kshatriya. It's not that. It's like you come from that family and the lineage.
And so what about the issue of intercaste marriages, people from different castes who get married? How is that viewed in India, or how
See,
does that
the marriages in our part of the world is what you call forced marriages.
Oh, okay.
Because what happens is that marriages in most of our part is basically a social contract between the families.
Right.
And it's rarely, nobody talks, Of course, these days, educated boys and girls may find their own partners in certain places. Uh, and parents also ask their children. But the two, three things are very, very particular. One thing is the people are very particular about the castes, and then particular about also the status. That is, after that, the status is equally. And the third is the love of Indians toward the fair skin.
Okay.
So the fair skin is like among across the castes. So when we are discussing caste with race, we have to be very clear that when we talk about the Dalits or the Shudras, other communities, it's not that they all are blacks. A Brahmin can also be a black, and a Dalit can also be a fair skinned. Because a Dalit in Kashmir can be as fair and much more fairer than a Brahmin of Tamil Nadu in
And I
south
think
of
that would be a common misunderstanding, I think, that people in Europe would have, is that
yeah.
this idea in your head that people who are Dalits and from a lower caste, to use the terrible words, would have darker skin than somebody from a higher caste. But you're saying that's not
Yeah.
necessarily true?
No, that's not true. That's not true.
That's interesting. You mentioned, VB, the issue of manual scavenging, which is a barbaric practice for Dalits, where they're used as to dig out latrines and toilet pits,
Yeah.
basically, and we I mean, it sounds disgusting and degrading enough, but when you actually read some of the studies that hundreds of these people die because they're
Yeah.
overcome by the
Yeah.
terrible fumes and obviously the disease and the conditions. It's a dreadful situation. But there's also, I think, other things that I've read, and we spoke about it when I visited you in Delhi. But there's examples where people basically mistreat and abuse Dalits with impunity from the authorities. There was one example, I forget the exact details, maybe I can try and find the news article, where somebody was driving a car, someone from, let's say, a Brahmin or someone from a high caste, and he crashed the car, and there happened to be somebody who was a Dalit in the car. This person made him switch seats with them so that the Dalit would get the blame for the car accident. And this is something which was just accepted, that this person would have to acquiesce to this request. I mean, it's really an awful situation.
Yeah, because it's not merely, the what is happening in here is that it's not merely that Dalits are the poor or the weak. So that is also a very wrong thing. Dalits are a very strong community, culturally strong. And because of Dr. Ambedkar's work, and that is a very historic work, uh, the young Dalits, the young what we call Ambedkarites, actually, are far more powerful. They are writing, they are expressing themselves, they are the international forums, they are representing themselves. And this assertion and this success is actually undigestible to the caste Hindus. And that is the sad part. The part is not many people can say they love Dalits, the poor, and because it's good. But the problem starts when they find a successful, and not only successful, but an independent mind. A person who can think for himself or herself. That is the biggest challenge to the caste forces in India. They never tolerate an independent and a free thinking Dalit who can take his own decision and say no.
That's interesting. Yeah. You mentioned Dr. Ambedkar a couple of times. For those people who are not familiar with Dr. Ambedkar, can you tell us a little bit about his life, the work that he did, and the impact of his legacy in India?
I would say that that if I'm a humanist, it's reading Dr. Ambedkar and his legacy. I hope, because initially there was a lot of export of Gandhi and Gandhism world over in the name of peace and democracy and anti-colonialism and all, whatever. But now people are interested reading of Dr. Ambedkar. I would advise all of our friends to read Dr. Ambedkar's volumes. They are available. If they can't read that much, they should read about him, his life. One thing is clear. Ambedkar was a man of 21st century, a man of modern ideas, a man who rejected the age-old systems of caste, superstition, regressive orders that that denied women the right. But it's not that he was only fighting for the Dalits. He fought for the women's right in India, and when women were not even allowed to divorce, he was the person who made India's first law for the Hindu women, so that they can have the right in the property, and they can have the right to even divorce in case of they have a discord. So earlier time, people would just leave their wives, if they wanted to leave them in the villages, and just abandon them. So most of the women used to be called as abandoned and not officially divorced. Even today it happens. But now, if Indian women have right to vote, Dr. Ambedkar's contribution is enormous. So Ambedkar never harped on this so-called cultural thing. And when he revived in India, what he revived in India was the Buddhism. Now that Buddhism itself is a very dynamic political view, I would say, more cultural, so that people have something, an identity, because Dalits don't have the Hindu identity. They say we are Buddhist. So that important part is the greatest legacy. And today across the country, India, when we see there was so much of protest, so much of issues coming up, people are now actually finding Dr. Ambedkar and his writing, his constitution, his modern values as the only way to move forward and move together. Ambedkar is a symbol of democracy, of non-violence, of togetherness, and of equality.
Yeah, that's very fascinating, and I think something again which is not a person whose contribution to India, modern India, has not been very well understood outside of India, I think.
Actually, his contribution has not been now being acknowledged, obviously, but initially it was not much acknowledged.
Mm.
A man who wrote so much, who worked so hard for the rights of the people, fighting with the British, and being part of various conferences, various roundtables, and then getting rights for the Dalits in the constitution, in the political spectrum, is his contribution. Today, if Dalits are able to rise, able to fight, and able to fight independently, it is because of Dr. Ambedkar.
And there's another couple of Indian humanists that I've become familiar with through speaking to yourself and other members of the humanist community in India. The two other people that stick out for me are Periyar, of course,
Yes.
from Tamil Nadu, who
Yeah.
I think, like Dr. Ambedkar, made a magnificent contribution to humanistic ideas and the development of a modern, independent India, and also M.N. Roy.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, I think, that these people will be very well known to the Indian humanist community and the rationalist community, and indeed further afield as well, but maybe not as well known in the general consensus. When you mentioned obviously Gandhi, when I think when people in Europe think about India and the founding of a modern independent India, Gandhi obviously comes straight to mind.
Yeah.
But they don't think of people like Ambedkar, Periyar, M.N. Roy. And
Yes.
I think maybe it would be good for people outside of India to expand their consciousness about the founding fathers of a modern independent India.
Yeah, because reading about these people, even they came from the margins, and Periyar was a legend. There is no doubt about it. He was a man far ahead of his time. Like in Tamil Nadu state, since 1950s, 60s, there is only government in the opposition or the ruling party remain the Dravidian parties. So Periyar was actually, now here Periyar was of Dravidian identity and the color conscious. So he said black is beautiful, and he always because the southern Indian part of people had relatively the dark color, and Periyar actually symbolized that. So if you see the whole Dravidian movement, I think there is a great message in its symbolism also. Why is black supreme and why is black powerful? Is they always wear black as a shirt, white as a trouser. I have not seen even in Africa this thing, but there is a symbolism in it. Symbolism is in it that the black power, the black supremacy. Obviously, any kind of supremacy is not that good. But when you actually want to push the oppressed communities up, then you have to give them the new ideas of assertion, ideas of pride. And Periyar was a pure atheist, pure humanist. He did not take any shelter in gods. In fact, he virtually hated many times. He didn't like. He openly said it. And the reason is that he explained about them that these gods have given nothing to us. And but more than that, his social reform work in Tamil Nadu is remarkable. How he brought people, how he changed the whole narratives and the narratives of Tamil people, Tamil identity, and then the black identity issue. And most importantly, as you said, we were talking about the marriage system. And I said that we have mostly forced marriages, like the family do. And when the two individuals decide about themselves, it's very difficult for them unless they are very strong, very economically independent and powerful. Otherwise, they won't be able to survive. In the rural India, there is a physical violence against those individuals, even if they do marry within the caste. So in Tamil Nadu, Periyar has started self-respect marriages. And those self-respect marriages were like, he says that the man and woman should marry after being comrades, after being friends. And there was no priest in those marriages. And, so that those years, like 70 years back, 80 years back, these are things, he might have faced so much of a protest, but then he succeeded also. So I think for the Western world, at least they should understand a few of Indian leaders. So what happens is that the Western introduction to humanism is through M. N. Roy. Of course, he is himself a legendary figure. But Roy, though a great philosopher, was not really in the mass movement. He was nowhere and nobody remember, except for a very few loyal Royists, is virtually obliterated from the public mind. So, what happens when we say about Ambedkar? So, some of the humanists try to claim that he's a Dalit leader. When we talk about Periyar, they will say, "Oh, he's a South Indian leader or something." So, I think we have to come out of these thing. And there is another legendary person. He was actually executed by the British. His name is Bhagat Singh. At the 23 years of age, he was executed in Lahore jail. And tomorrow is his birthday. Shaheed Bhagat Singh, he is called Martyred Bhagat Singh, one of the most popular icons in India and South Asia. And it's not that Bhagat Singh, many people put him as a kind of a violent person, but he was not. Just in that 23 years of age, he has read so much and he wrote so much. And why the importance of kind of atheism and humanism from his jail diaries, and why religion is so dangerous. It cannot bring unity. So all these people have commonalities. I think the Western world must get into Indian thing and try to know about these figures. So they are very fascinating. Bhagat Singh is actually, you can compare with him Che Guevara. So he's far superior to Che in terms of thoughts. That's my personal opinion. Maybe many people feel offended, but my personal opinion is that because he only got to live till 23 years of his age, and I have not found people of high caliber also who have written so much, despite being half of the time, like 5-6 years of those 23 years in jail. And he's writing about being atheist, about why there are Hindu-Muslim riots in India, how we can stop it, what is the idea of a socialist India. All these kind of a simple essay in people's language.
Yeah, that's fascinating, and I think just to add a bit of reflection from me in terms of what you mentioned about Periyar and Tamil Nadu. We were at the World Atheist Conference in Tamil Nadu in 2018, which was my first time in India, and I must admit I was blown away by the scale of the Periyar movement in Tamil Nadu. I mean, we visited a university, a women's university run by the Periyar Institute. which is, for those watching in Europe and America, you could say, it's a humanist university.
Yeah,
It's similar sort of
absolutely.
based on similar ideas, and to know that there is, humanist political parties, humanist universities, schools, that so much of the social welfare system is ran by. We also could mention the Atheist Centre,
Yeah.
VG Wada. It's truly amazing to know the scale of what's going on in India, and I fully echo your suggestion to people who in Europe and beyond to learn more about the humanists of India, because I think what they've done is kind of amazing. You mentioned VB there about the Hindu Muslim riots that Bhagat Singh was writing about, and that's perhaps topical as well. You wrote an article for us, the Humanists International, only a few months ago, I think, about ongoing Hindu-Muslim riots in India. I think this was related to the, I don't know the name of the national
CA, NRC, CA.
here, but perhaps you could
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about that and about the situation that many Indian Muslims find themselves in these days.
See, the thing is that the government brought a bill in Parliament, which is called Citizenship Amendment Act. It is passed now. The government says that its intention was to bring the Hindus who are persecuted, Hindus and others, except for Muslims. And they have a point in that they say that, the Muslims are the countries like Afghanistan or Pakistan. Of course, that's also a wrong presumption because these are individuals. But we are thinking like here, the whole perception is like which identity you are. So they made a law and they say that, all minorities persecuted in these countries are welcomed in India. Obviously, it was not, many people misunderstood many things, and because in politics, many things disappear, many things appear. So it's also in the din of everything, the debate doesn't come in a real issues, but it just goes and bang on other issues. And that time it was till 2014 who had been settled in India. Many people who had ran away from these countries trying to protect. And we all know in Afghanistan, people, Sikhs and Hindus have been in a very difficult situation. In Pakistan also, Bangladesh exodus is continuously, despite there are government, but the fact is there in the rural areas, the Hindus, the Muslims, the Christians, they migrate. And a number of them come to India, like the border state of Rajasthan, some come to Gujarat. So the government says that if these people have appeared, come to India before 2014, there was no issue at all. Now the main issue was the NRC, the National Register of Citizens. Now what was the thing was that apart from this, the National Register was meant actually, it was also started by the Congress government. And by it was a very old promise. The Northeast Indian states. So Northeast is basically the 7 Indian states, very beautiful, which is like bordering with Bangladesh, Myanmar, and even Nepal, Bhutan. So these states are like Tripura, Meghalaya, Manipur, Nagaland, Mizoram, Sikkim, Assam. All these states, so they have a very peculiar situation. Even after independence, many of them joined later to the Indian Union. So what happens is that there is a crisis, and what happened there was in 1971 when the Bangladesh emerged a new state because of the torture of the Pakistani army. A large number of people, the Bangladeshi people, had actually migrated to India. That time it used to be called East Pakistan, and India gave them shelter. Now most of them, many people settled here only. They did not get. What happened that resulted in the demographic changes in some of these states like Tripura and Assam, and there was a lot of protest against that. And I think we have to understand that naturality of that.
But what
Any
do you mean? Can I just ask? What do you mean by demographic changes? Is this?
demographic changes means, yes, they say that now in Assam, there was always a fear that, if we allow, in the name of like CA, if we allow the Bangladeshi Hindus to come, so that means already there are the Bangladeshi Hindus here, Bengali Hindus, but they call Bengali Hindus. So their agitation in 1980s, and it was one of the longest agitation of the students and civil society in Assam, was against the domination, against the huge influx of the Bengali-speaking people in Assam,
Okay.
and that resulted in a lot of violence, and ultimately there was a pact between then Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi and student leaders, and that subsequently Assam had the first time the youngest government in India. Everyone was a student, and in 1984 or 85, something 85, 86, 87, something like this. So it was very interesting. So now, what has happened after the CA, the northeastern state had got a little bit of, again, suspicious, because they felt that, fine, people are calling that Hindus will come, we have no problem. But for them, it was not the Hindu-Muslim issue. For them, it was basically an ethnic issue. So it's also like India is such a big country, and to dictate it as per the whims of Delhi is a bit, I think, unreal and wrong. So many times our experts and our columnists, writers, very abruptly, what happened is that after the British left, all issues of conflict in India are discussed in terms of Hindus and Muslims.
Right.
We feel that, all issues of conflict are not merely Hindus or Muslims. There are the other parties also. The Dalits are there, the Adivasis are there, the ethnic issues are there. So in the northeastern part, which was actually disturbed with this act, the issue of the ethnicity was more important than the issue of whether the Hindus will come or the Muslims will come.
I see. Fascinating. And of course,
And slowly the movement grew up everywhere in the other part of the country, and it was obviously a peaceful movement, and everywhere people were singing national anthem, reading constitution, reading the preamble of Indian constitution, "We the people," and it was a site of unity. But yes, no government likes, because the turmoil.
That's interesting, and I guess it plays into a wider view of what's happening in Indian politics. And I take your point as well that to speak about Indian politics, especially for me as a European, maybe sounds a little bit too general, because to talk about the politics of a country where you're talking about what 1/6 of humanity. It's a lot of people to talk about having a political situation, but nonetheless, some of the news that we watch here in Europe talks about the increasing dominance of the Hindu nationalist BJP government, the development of this ideology which is called Hindutva. This idea that India is actually a Hindustan. That it's a kind of homogenous mono-religious group of people. But of course, we know that that's not accurate, and I think we even know that the history of India, going back, to the ancient history of India, it's always been a
Yeah.
very diverse mixtures of tribes, of ethnicities, of religions. And I just wonder, what's your perspective on this issue of Hindutva and kind of collectivism of identity in India? What's your perspective on that?
See, I really don't use the term Hindutva, because I call it Brahminism, and Brahminism, the Brahminical domination. It is the same politics. So you use the terminology, you use different terms. You use today you call India or Hindustan or whatever. You bring different narratives, but the the idea and imagination is the same, the dominance of the caste system and dominance of the ruling castes which dominated. If we see, if we analyze the whole, uh, who are the people who are speaking, who are benefited from this, who are the top of the structure, we say that the the all the Brahmins, the Banyas, the Kshatriyas, these castes have got their political domination again and got domination everywhere. So what has happened in like since 1980s, Indian democracy was passing through a churning, and the churning was that the marginalized were seeking their power, seeking their representation in the power structure, and so every party has to seed them, give them seats, and in that way the Hindutva political outfits actually got marginalized for a lot of time period, got out of power, and they realized that it is important to take them also along with them, because when we call Bahujan means the majority. So see, that is why I say, if you discuss India in terms of caste, then the Hindutva is a majority. If you in terms of religion, then you can say that the Hinduism is a majority. But if you discuss India in terms of caste, then those who talking about majority are a minority. Because it is the Bahujan, the Dalits, the Adivasis, the backward classes, they form the India's majority, and they are not. They are being sidetracked. They are being systematically denied rights, and whatever they got. So through various acts of omission and commission, they have been, through all these things, they are being, denied. So using technical terms, using technicalities of courts, legalities, all those kind of things are there. And that has happened, as I said, in earlier time, that assertive Ambedkarites and assertive marginalized community people are not liked. They are felt as the biggest threat. And that is where the real challenge to Hindutva will come from these sections only. And because it is these sections who are the victim of the caste system, of the victim of the Brahminical social order. So how can they everything is being built up, everything is being done to deviate from the issues. So the propaganda machinery is active. So propaganda machinery developed now, because they know that if we don't take the Dalits and the backward communities, the tribals along with them, then they are nowhere, because they are not even 2-3%. So remember, these 2-3% are ruling India in the name of India's majority.
That's interesting. It's very interesting, like you say, how the use of our terminology, affects how we view political and social debates. I guess maybe my last sort of question would be, we've spoken about the amazing contribution of Indian humanists to the development of a modern India, the constitution and so on, and also the contribution to humanist thought around the world. How do you feel about the future of Indian politics, Indian social affairs? Do you think these humanistic ideas of ours are in the ascendancy? Are you optimistic, or are you less optimistic about the future?
See, right now, definitely the situation is not that good, not that positive. But I can say that the world belongs to humanity. That I can say. These masses were exploited in the name of gods by the gods men and gods women. Don't need further exploitation. And whether it's Dr. Ambedkar, whether it is Jyotiba Phule, he was the guru of Dr. Ambedkar, you see, and his wife Savitribai Phule. She was the first woman teacher who started school for even the widow women, the Brahmin widows. Can you imagine? And then Periyar and the Bhagat Singh and Amin Roy and all these kind of legends talked about importance of humanistic ideas. The only thing is that the humanist people, because this I have always debated, humanism is not an isolated non-political philosophy, as many people would want us to believe, and many people confine it to just miracle exposure things. So I said no. It as I appreciate IHU's work on blasphemy law. You're taking the political Islam, and that is the work, that we need to, because when the food habits are challenged, when our food habits are challenged, and we are forced to have a kind of a monoculture, mono food habits. Now you eat everything vegetarian. You promote, such ideas that non-vegetarian people or anybody not eating food of your choice is a bad people, kind of for demon. So these things have to be taken and have to be challenged, and internationally.
Can I just explore a little bit there what you said, VB? You're talking about food habits, and one of the things which, again, I think a lot of colleagues in Europe won't be aware of is there was, for a long time, I don't know the extent of it presently, but for a long time there was these issues of, forget what you call it, but basically it was a series of riots and attacks because of the eating of beef.
The mob lynching cases and all these
Yeah.
things.
And
Yeah,
maybe you can just tell us a little bit about that, because
yeah.
I think
So
the
this is
issue of
also
like food politics is quite a big one.
yeah, this is a politics. This is a complete politics. And see, those who think that India is a completely vegetarian country should just search the data. We are one of the biggest meat eating country and meat exporting country and beef exporting country. India is one of the biggest beef exporting country.
Wow, I didn't
You know,
know that.
you can check the facts.
Wow.
And the thing is that beef, I can understand Hindus consider cow as their, they consider cow as mother. And fair enough, we people should respect that. Who respecting, no problem. But people eat also. People eat beef elsewhere, in northeastern part, like I say, Meghalaya, Manipur, in Goa, in Kerala, in many states. They might be cow, maybe buffalo, might be other progenies of things. What I'm saying is, it's not that somebody has to deliberately eat to tease someone, or somebody has to not to eat to please someone. Now it became an issue in the North India particularly, not much in South. In North India already, I can say, is not that people eat beef. North India is not that much into the meat thing, except for the goat and the chickens. Even the fish is not, there is not much fish culture in North India. So people were like, if somebody is taking, a chicken piece from the market, and he is being blamed that he took the beef.
Right, yeah,
So
yeah.
this kind of things happen, and these are like, even if somebody has done something wrong, so most of Indian states have passed the cow protection laws. So we have almost all, most of the Indian states have passed the Cow Protection Act, and that say cow slaughter is a punishable offense, seriously punishable offense. Fine enough. If those who are doing it, they should be punished. But why the people are punishing it publicly? If somebody is found, why there is not fair investigation? What is happening is that in today's time, there is a very dangerous process that is started here. Is through media, and media is a propaganda media. Through propaganda media, we are making up things as a reality show, and deciding about people, that in the studios you are have the court, so you are judge and jurist and executioner, and then that makes, it's kind of a, it's kind of a continuously propagating hatred. So I have no issue at all of the laws. As far as the laws are concerned, we have to challenge them whenever there is a challenge and in the court of law and through legal process. But what I am saying is that in the name of, see, not every Muslim eats the beef. So why should we think that beef is just related to Muslims?
Mm.
And not every Hindu is a what we call vegetarian.
Mm. And I
So
think
this
that's the interesting thing, maybe just to point out for people, is that in some cases these anti-beef eating vigilantes, basically,
yeah,
there is an element of anti-Muslim bigotry going on here as
yeah,
well,
yeah,
because there's
absolutely.
this perception.
See, the beef has the symbolism. When they say beef, cow, it just directly connect with the Muslims,
Yeah.
which is very wrong. Most of the Indian companies which export beefs have been owned by the Hindus.
I didn't know that. That's fascinating.
These companies want to export and they want to enjoy all freedom and everything. The first thing is that the government should stop all these things. If they are really concerned and care for it, stop all this.
Yeah, and I remember this January I visited. We were both at the Atheist Centre in Vijayawada for its 80th anniversary, and in there, which was founded by Gora, another amazing Indian humanist, and he organised. I think it was Gora, or maybe it was his wife. I can't remember, but they organised a big community event where they cooked both pork and beef. And this was a symbolic act to bring together people, vegetarians, non-vegetarians, Muslims and Hindus, and to try and show that we can obviously promote the humanistic idea of living in a shared space.
Yeah, there is a problem actually, because what happens is that we are very particular about beef and the same thing about pork. So many people feel very offended. They can talk about this. So we take political position. So some people who are against the ruling party, they will always talk about beef. I love beef and all these kind of things. And some people who are not, they will start up say, oh, I love pork. So this is not the thing. The thing is that let food be a choice of the people. Food cannot be imposed, and food should not be here to, instigate communal rights and hatred. And let's differ. I as much respect, vegetarianism if it is not spreading hatred or prejudices. So if a vegetarian can sit and say that, I'm eating in front of you, if I'm eating something like fish or even chicken or even goat or even pork or even beef or whatever, even crab, there's so many things. So there are so many varieties. People only know about these two, three varieties in India.
So, well, listen, this has been a fascinating conversation, VB. As always, you're a fascinating person, and we'll put some links in the YouTube information to people can read about some of your, you've written many books on these topics. We've only scratched the surface of the issues which you and others are working on in India. Is there any last messages you would like to share with our humanist colleagues around the world, or anything you would like to say before we end the conversation?
I think humanists world over have now bigger role, and there are two, three things which I would definitely ask even Humanists International to look into it. And one is globally the right-wing hatred growing. So the racial and caste prejudices continuously growing. And I think there is time when we should promote equality and start discussion and debate on these issues, and not just discussion and debate, but also to lobby at the UN for the better mechanism. Second, civil society is targeted everywhere. There is virtually death knell everywhere. No authoritarian governments want civil society to survive. So what is the way out? I think that is also important, because if the civil society is not there, then the hatred that is hate speeches that growing, hate speeches actually results in ultimate crime against humanity. So we have to monitor these things and continuously strengthen some international mechanism that, because The institutions and most of the so-called developing worlds have collapsed. And it is time for strengthening international mechanism also, which can put pressure. Right now, I have been a little bit disappointed with the Western world's failures in acting and in issuing statements on various issues, and also maybe because of the COVID, they have been on their own. But I think its time has come when such uh, so that all activists who are working for the people's rights are not they don't get lynched either by the people or by the intelligence or security agencies.
Mm.
So that's the there are various ways, various stop your resources, stop your thing, physically intimidate. Then I said character assassination through propaganda media. So everything is like an absolutely well coordinated manner, and this is a global phenomenon. So I think we have to take up this challenge and work on this.
Excellent. Well, I think you've made your point loud and clear, and I'd like to thank you again for joining us and sharing with us your amazing work. And I hope people find it interesting. And like I say, we'll put some links below where people can get in touch with you and support you. And VB Rawat, thank you once again.
Thank you very much, Gary, and it was a pleasure speaking to you. Hope to speak to you again sometime.
Thank you.